You ready to go?
When we get to it, I'll just end, so. Sure, I saw him right there when I.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call the Amherst County Service Authority Board meeting to order. Let the record reflect that today is November the 4th and the time is 1:30 p.m. We will move on to citizen comments. Seeing no citizens, we will close citizen comments. And I'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the minutes.
Before you have a motion on that, and you and I just talked about it, there are two minor typos on page 361. I just talked to Regina. We'll get those corrected as soon as the meeting's over. I can describe them for you if you want to know what they are.
I'm sure moved that we accept the minutes as corrected.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Okay. First, I wanted to say what I'm planning on doing. I sent you all the draft budget. This was yesterday, the day before. It was tracking things down. As part of that preparation, and I want to work with Mr. Perot, who had asked me a few weeks ago. He wanted to get with me and Richard about updates to the monthly report. And what I want to do with the monthly report, hopefully starting in January, is have more of a graphic kind of thing with charts, and also a cover sheet that will break it down into accounts receivable and O&M and that kind of thing. So that hopefully is coming. And I'm going to be getting with Mr. Perot and also with Richard on updates to both the budget and the monthly report over the next month or so. If you'll turn, as we have been recently, I don't think going through all the numbers in the actual financial report is really doing anything, but if you go to the chart, the pandemic effects chart, which is the second attachment, I think, in your packet, like we've talked about in the last couple of months, you can see we're just continuing to recover from everything. In water sales, we're essentially even as of compared to last year. As of next month, we should be out of the red and in the black. Sewer, wastewater, we had a minor setback. It increased by the deficit increased by about 1%, probably because of the area that was built. We have several different areas, different books, as they call them, and some areas have more sewer in the book than others, and it just depends on how they're built. So that might be why that happened. But all in all, we're if you look down at the very bottom, the total revenues, once you take out the reimbursements from the EDOT project and the DHCD project, we're again essentially even. And I'm thinking as of next month and for the rest of the reports, which will actually go through through February. February will actually have the final report for 2020, so we should be well into the black and should see the return that we expected last year when you all adopted the budget, and we should be back to where we expected to be. That was a quick rundown. Are there any questions? All in all, I think we're doing well. We're recovering from the pandemic, and with sewer, we never do well with sewer. Sewer is about 20% of connections for water, and so water essentially carries sewer, and that's normal for most service authorities. But again, I think we're doing relatively well, and we should be fine by the end of the budget year.
So, Mr. Hopkins, just for clarification, on this pandemic impact on the financials, the orangish red color were negative numbers?
Yes, ma'am. Those are all deficits. So you can see coming from left to right, beginning, everything was in the deficit in January as the pandemic first hit, and we reached, it got to a peak with the March and April reports, and then we've been improving ever since. And again, I think with the next report in the water category, everything should be in the black, and total revenues all should be in the black, and maybe in water and wastewater combined. I think all that should happen next month, and certainly by the end of the year, I think by the end of the budget year with the December report in February, everything should be in the black.
So what do you attribute from September to October, where we were negative 42, almost 43,000, and had such a spike to come to black in October?
I'm sorry, where are you now?
So on the pandemic document as well.
Which category?
Water sales.
Okay. For September to October?
Mm-hmm. Right, it's $43,000 we were in the negative, and then we jumped to 279,000.
Oh, that's the reimbursement from the VDOT project. Those reimbursements come in electronically. That's the way VDOT does it. And the way our system is set up, they have to be, when they come in, they deposit them directly into our account, and everything that gets deposited into our account electronically is attributed to water sales, because that's typically what it is. And that's the difference between, if you look underwater, you see sales, and then you see sales minus project reimbursements. The project reimbursement was $313,000 in VDOT reimbursements that I wanted to back out of there because it's not sales. And it really, including that reimbursement in there kind of skews what it looks like for sales. So you need to take that out. And once you do that, that 279,000 dropped to about 34,000. But from the August report to the September report, you can see it dropped by about 33% down to about 12,000, to the point where we're almost even. And I think all that will be in the black next month. That makes sense?
I think so. The only thing I would suggest, and the reason that I question this, is because you see under revenues under wastewater, you have a negative 26,000. That's what made me question whether your orange or red numbers were all negative. And then there's a water and wastewater sales that says negative 36.
Let me find these down. Under which month?
Oh, back in March.
March. Isn't that, everything was red. Everything was in the deficit compared to the previous year because the revenues just weren't there because we've been hit already with the people not paying bills.
I understand. It was just the negative mark there that made me question whether everything in red
Oh,
was
I'm sorry.
negative.
I corrected. I picked up on some of them. I didn't get. I'll fix that next time. Thank you.
Or any questions?
I had a question on page 6 of the packet.
Yes.
We're looking, it makes a comparison to pre-recession levels,
Yes, sir.
and that's been 12 years ago. I'm just wondering what the relevance of us looking that far backward at this point is, based on what we know we've been for the last couple of years.
Well, I included because that's my target to get back to. I want to get back to that point. And if you look in 2018, right above the pre-recession, you can see we were there. And I thought we had fully recovered, at which point I was going to take that out of this report. But in 2019, it kind of tanked a little bit again.
Okay.
And so 2020 is going to be a lot better. And I'm hoping that maybe next year I can just take that out of this report altogether. So we will be back to our pre-recession connection levels.
I've got a question as well. So. Excuse me. In looking at that, what you're showing is pretty much a cash flow model about, I guess, cash coming in and cash coming out. And from a cash basis, our revenues are less due to COVID. But we've invoiced consistently, haven't we? Is that receipts or is that invoice amounts?
Those receipts.
Okay, so how are we on invoice amounts?
We're invoicing like we always have. It's
Right.
just we've got a backlog of, I think it's about 200 people that are behind in balances.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I understand the delinquency, but when we're starting to think about next year in the budget, and thank you for sending us the draft document to review, we need to be thinking about the invoicing. And looking at the invoicing, if the invoicing is growing, if the number of residences, the number of units is growing, and think about it in terms of invoicing. Now, the collection side, that's more of an operation side, and we'll have to make an allowance for collections. But I think we need to be, and we'll talk about this more. I think we need to be looking at the invoicing of that.
Okay.
So, yeah, to follow up on that, to ask it a different way, is consumption about the same or more? Are people using the same amount of water?
It's a little bit higher now because we've done so well for connections this year. But at the same time though, it's offset by the, by the training center. And, those are actually, let me walk that back. No, it's actually, we probably are dropping some. I mean, when I first came on here, we were actually producing a little over 1 million gallons a day. And now we're between 950,000 and 1 million gallons a day. So it is dropping, and that's that's not only due to the pandemic and the, and CBTC, but there's a national trend, for people I mean, the domestic water usage, public water usage is just going down.
Well, some of that's attributed to low flow toilets and all of that nature. I don't know if it's a federal mandate or what, but a lot of the stuff is more energy efficient or water efficient than it used to be. And getting back to he was talking about invoices. When you look at that, I see the connections, the amount of connections you have, the businesses that are currently online as well as the residential households.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
He was talking about invoices and, what was the other?
Invoices versus receipts.
Versus receipts. Well, your invoices, couldn't you also look at that by seeing how many connections that you have?
Sure.
You know, versus the previous year, wouldn't that tell you a little bit about that information? Or am I wrong?
I just need to get back with staff and I can start tracking the actual number of invoices we send out each month. It's not gonna be real definitive because depending on, especially with water, we only bill water every other month. So we're not going to be, you're not going to be billing the same thing every month. So it's going to bounce up and down, which we've talked about in the past is the revenues kind of jump up and down is because, 1 month we're going to be billing, say, books 1 through 5, and there may be 5,000 customers in there. And then the next month in residential, or maybe doing books 6 through 10, and there's only 3,000 customers. So it's.
So, Mr. Perry, to me, if you don't mind, that's kind of the ground level view. I'm trying to think on a budget standpoint, getting on more than 10,000 foot level. What do we invoice? What is to Tom's point? What's our consumption or what's our water use in a year? How many dollars are we invoicing in a year? And that's going to spread equally over 12 months, roughly. Roughly, there'll be more in the summer, less in the winter. But that's going to help us predict, and we can look back over time over the past 5 years. What is our rate of consumption? Is it increasing or decreasing, as you said? And then how much are we charging for that on every year? And where's our invoicing going? Are we projected to have greater revenue or less revenue? And if we're in a declining revenue, we need to start figuring out how to either accommodate for that in the expenses, either look for efficiencies and so forth. I know I'm way off topic here, Madam Chair. That we need to look for better efficiencies or increase the revenue. So it's a planning tool. Where are we? How much water are we consuming? How much do we bill for that every year? And how do we get that to match up with our expenses? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, sir. I just wanted to basically ask, I think you may have just clarified that, but are you looking for long-term water, how much water we're making and how much we're billing for, or are you looking for present overdue ARs? Because right now, I imagine our overdue ARs are pretty heavy because we haven't been disconnecting people as aggressively as we normally would.
Not as bad as you thought. Okay. We typically every month have anywhere from 30 to 60. People normally don't pay their bills on, and I don't pay their bills on time. We cut them off, they come in that day and pay their bills. And it's an ongoing cycle. I've been trying to fix that ever since I got here. But since, like I think I said a minute ago, we've got about 200, I think, right now that are over the $200 threshold for being cut off, and about maybe 2/3 of that is having to do with the pandemic. So we just sent out the notices last month and the month before. A lot of people have come in, they're now on payment plans, and I think we've got that pretty much under control. But that's where we are on.
So the 200 that aren't on payment plans?
No, at the last meeting, there were about 200 that were not. I'm sorry, 2 meetings ago. And then since then, we put out the 2 notices that people have been calling and getting on payment plans. Off the top of my head, I don't know the number that are still outstanding. Now, we did resume cutoffs on October 1st. I mean, we talked about that at the September meeting, and that also, that really resulted in a lot of people coming in and paying the bills. So I will try to get an update for you all on that for the next meeting.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to old business.
Okay. As per what we've been doing lately, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I'm not going to touch base on a lot of it because a lot of it just we're not doing an awful lot with. So I'll just touch on the high points. On the reservoir primary spillway upgrades, that project is now complete. The sluice gate is repaired. All of the intake valves are repaired. We got the sluice gate repaired just a few days before Hurricane Zeta was supposed to hit. So if we had a problem, we would have been able to lower the lake water level and protect the dam. Fortunately, we didn't really have any issues. There's a project report in your packet from the contractor. It just describes what he did, his photographs in there, all the work that was done. And I got a 13-minute video, which actually shows that the guy underwater doing work and all that. It's just pretty cool. Unfortunately, it's about a gazillion megabytes, and I couldn't even fit it on a jump drive, so I wasn't able to bring it. But that work is complete. The VDOT Woods Lake Road water and sewer relocations. The water main is installed, complete from Walmart to the east end of the projects. The contractor is now moving the existing water services to the new main. We got reimbursed about $150,000 by VDOT on October 16th. We'll be doing an appropriation later on in the meeting regarding that. The contractor just invoiced about $280,000, and that'll be that's being processed now and will be on the December board meeting for reimbursement. And you can see the updated project schedule. By the end of this month, all the water services should be relocated and the road cuts repaired. And the sanitary sewer installation, that actually should have said mid-November, not mid-October. So he's working on that now, or will be working on that shortly. And the water line installation from Walmart up to Route 29 will take place in late November into mid-December, and then moving the rest of the existing water service connections to that new main at the end of December. Questions? Phelps Road School. Of course, we've done almost all our work, but we have had one heck of a lot of problems with the firefall. I spent 3 or 4 months almost begging the developer and the contractor to get me information about when the vault was going to be installed, so I could have our crew ready to install the piping, the meter, and all that stuff inside it per our standard detail. And I actually told the developer and the contractor, we bought this material, we've got this material delivered, we're ready to go. Let me know what you're going to do. And then about 2 weeks ago on Monday afternoon, a subcontractor called me and said that the vault would be delivered on Thursday morning. And I said, fine, we've got all our stuff ready to go. I'll have the crew ready to go. And he said, we don't need your crew. We went ahead and did everything, which violated our standard detail. Right now we have, so we don't know what they did. I got the contractor to send me shop drawings. I commented on the shop drawings that we need to know what they actually put inside the vault so we know what we're working with. And I'm still waiting to get responses to my shop drawings. I've been trying to work with the subcontractor and the general contractor to get through all this and get to the point where we can disinfect these lines, or first vacate all the water that's in the water main through these pipes, then disinfect them so they can actually connect them to the vault to the building. And every time I suggest something, the contractor says, yeah, we're going to do it that way. Then he calls me and says, we did it. And I go out there and they did something totally different. So we've just been bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball for about 3 weeks now. I'm still waiting for the responses to my request for shop drawing, comment responses, and also getting the final, getting everything ready to go so we can do all this stuff. And we were supposed to have that done about the middle of last week, and I've been calling the contractor, and he just hasn't been ready, and right now we're gonna hold it back. So we're doing everything that we need to do. We're just waiting for the contractor to do what he needs to do. Then we can connect the fire vault, and then our work will be done. It's really kind of sad because Waukesha spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars to have the contractor put all this stuff into the vault instead of, when he'd already paid or you all had already paid for him to have, for us to put the stuff in the vault. So Waukesha just spent a ton of money that didn't need to be spent.
And we spent money that we didn't need to spend.
Well, sure. Either way, however.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, Mr. Hopkins, I would think that the fire protection is closely related to occupancy of that structure. And I would suggest you have a conversation with Nate, the building inspector, about, if they're not doing the fire protection per your details in the way you need it to be, hold up their occupancy permits. And I would talk to Waukesha Development about that if they're not giving you the information you need, then they're not gonna get occupancy of the building.
Well, they can't occupy the building until the water is connected anyway. And we're not gonna allow them to connect the water until all this
So
stuff.
you have your methods.
We've got a hammer, yes. Thanks.
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
So you sound like you're bothered by this, and I understand that. You spent some time on it, you spent some effort on it, you've been trying to help out the developer, to be a good public service, just serving and try to get out of the developer's way. Makes me, and maybe there's some history here that I'm not aware of, makes me ask that why are we doing developer installs? You don't have to answer that now, I'm just kind of broadly asking the question. And secondly, I don't think I'd be too worried about it. You do what you need to do to respond in a timely manner and get the information out. But you know what? The water's not getting cut on until it's right.
Well, I'm not worried about it. I just wanted to inform you all what was going on. And regarding I assume you mean by the developer installs, actually putting the equipment inside the vault?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? We do that because we maintain it. And what we don't want to do is have the contractor put something in that we don't know what the materials are, we don't know who put it in, it could be very shoddy work, and then it's in, we've got to take it over to maintain, and we could have leaks all over the place, the stuff could break, and because once we accept it, it's ours, and then we have to replace it all.
Oh,
So
you've got your standard details and you've got your spec. And there's, just like any other construction contract, they build it to spec. If they don't, you don't accept it.
Right. Well, but what I'm trying to do, again, guess because this has been a pet project of the supervisors and I guess the Service Authority Board for several years, and I'm trying to do, and also because of business friendliness, I'm trying to do everything I can to help these guys. And apparently the subcontractor told me that he was told by the contractor, he pointed to the standard detail, our standard detail, and says, build it exactly like that. Now, there are 3 notes on there that says the Service Authority will put in all the guts of the vault, but apparently he missed those notes. And so he built it exactly like what's in there. I mean, it looks like that. But until I get final shop drawings that I know what he installed, I don't know what he put in. So that's what we're waiting for.
I appreciate the business friendliness and trying to implement what the supervisors desire.
Trying.
If I might poke my head in on this issue, if the developer has effectively paid twice for the same thing because the subcontractor ran amok, that's something that I suspect Mr. Rogers and Ms. Hanson could bring up with the developer, and I bet you the subcontractor gets snapped pretty fast by.
Well, I've sent at least one and I think 2 emails to the contractor, copied Mr. McCormick, that said, I don't know why you all did this because the county had already paid for it, and now you've paid the contractor, so it's been paid for twice. I would like to think that Dave has done something about that already, but I haven't heard of it. I think that's internal.
My point is, I don't want you to be put in a situation where they're ready to occupy the building, and then because they haven't built the firewall the way that it needed to be built, or worked with you the way that they should have, they're pressuring you to turn the water on, right, and get occupancy to the building. I think you made it very clear to them that it hasn't been done correctly and it needs to be rectified.
Yes, sir. It's probably a good point. I will talk to Mr. Young just to keep him in the loop. And maybe he can put some additional pressure on him.
To that point, I think it'd be a good idea if you, any future correspondence, to copy Mr. Young on it. That way it's on record that they see that you've copied the building department here.
Okay.
So we start a trail.
I'll do that. Thank you. Further? Okay, DC Mobile Home Park, I'm still working, Richard and I are still working with the state, trying to resolve the issues with maintaining water service to the Lower Rapidan area and the trailer park. There's not much more on that since the last board meeting, but just wanted to let you all know that we're still working on it.
Mr. Hopkins, and I second, what's your deadline? I mean, they close it up December, then December, right?
Theoretically, but from talking to Richard, it's almost certainly going to carry over into next year. I mean, the state has that deadline, but there's so much stuff that needs to get done that tell you what, I'll let Richard fill you in on that.
So first of all, there's still environmental issues that they're taking care of out on the campus. And in addition to that, of course, there's the outstanding bond. As I understand it, it's still about 16 years on it. So all that's got to be figured out. It can take more than a year. And the Lower Rapidan buildings that were recently renovated, there's no end date for those to be shut down
So these folks will have water still.
for quite some time.
Okay.
And they would have it anyway. I mean, the water actually comes from the city. We buy it from the city. It gets delivered by the city to the training center and distributed there. And then we bill the customers down at the trailer park. What we're trying to do is get the service authority water main down there, because the water main from the city is 1.5 to 2 miles long. And the trailer park uses so little water that we're not getting it turned over fast enough to prevent the water from going bad. And we're losing chlorine, we're developing disinfection byproducts, we could end up having taste and odor issues. So what's going to have to end up happening is, what may have to end up happening is that we have to go down there and start opening hydrants down at the trailer park and wasting water. And that's nothing we can bill our customers for, but the city's going to bill us. So the thought is for us to get connected with our water main down there, because our water main will be a lot shorter, and hopefully that will at least temporarily resolve that problem. The Reservoir Dam Improvements Project, the bonds are closing on the bonds. It is supposed to take place November 18th. The final interest rate is 2.33%, which is down from the 3.5% they estimated, so that's good. The amortization is down from 25 years to 20 years, which again is good. And I've just got 13 documents here that there's more and I have both signed, and I've got to get the Ms. Tucker from the supervisors and the county administrator as their clerk to sign those documents, and I'll get it back to the bond attorney tomorrow. But that looks like that's all closing very well, and we should be, the Herd Project is already working on the design, and I'm thinking that we should have the design done by early spring, bidding late spring, start construction in the summer. And we'll probably spend about $1 million on the project next year, and the last $750,000 in 2022 to close it out. And that's included in the budget if you've had a chance to look at it. And at the last board meeting, Trevor Gillespie, he's a developer, he came in and talked about the Westdale Court sewer extension he's looking for, because he's got a drain field on a building that's going bad, and I didn't have time to get this into the packet. At the last meeting, I was requested by Mr. Martin to put together some kind of a return on investment, amortization schedule, whatever. And you can see that I've estimated the total cost at about $95,000. We will get upfront from the developer tap fees approximately half that. The remainder of it can be amortized. I went through and took out all of the water usage records from the 10 units that would be connected to this new sewer extension right away. And figuring the sewer billings, assuming that they would be the same going forward, it would take a little bit less than 13 years to amortize this. Now that sounds like a lot of, a long time, and I guess it is a long time. But if you look at the fact that this is the kind of project that we exist to take care of, to protect the public health, to protect the environment, I would still like to go ahead and pursue this. And I think if I could get the board's directive to proceed, we could probably be under construction and have design done over the next few months and get it put in as soon as possible. We'd like to get this. I think Mr. Gillespie said that he's repaired the drain field, but it's like a temporary Band-Aid, probably won't last that long. So we'd like to get the sewer out there as quickly as possible. And I'm not looking for an answer right this second, unless you all want to, but I wanted to get that to you unless you all, unless you all digest it and come back with questions and comments. And hopefully maybe at the next board meeting, we could, I would hope we could get authorization to proceed.
Refresh my memory, are these existing buildings or new buildings?
These are, Mr. Gillespie owns, I think, 9 lots.
Yeah, total over there, the 2 buildings that are existing here, one, they're side by side, but it's, they were built in the, I think, early 90s, somewhere in that section.
So is there any new construction?
Not right now. But he's got at least 2 vacant lots, and he's looking at buying a 3rd lot, and they will involve new construction. He also has, I think, 3 or 4 other existing buildings that are on drain fields that will eventually also tie into a sewer system when we do a phase 2 and phase 3 extension in this area. So we could be looking at picking up, I don't know, 40 or 50 customers out there over the next few years.
Let me put it another way. So the initial funding from developer tap fees, you've got 20 units. And that's
10 units. 4 in one building and 6 in another.
All right, but then under that, you have that's the connection. So out of the 10 units is $44,960.
Yes.
So is there a potential to have additional units in the future?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, like I said, he's got, how many units do you have up there right now? Existing buildings?
Existing buildings, it's a total of 26 units. And to be completely honest with you, if I didn't have to pay for this, those new buildings would be a lot sooner. But this extends it right out to it, and I have 2 lots that are right above this that we will eventually connect onto the sewer.
So would you connect those buildings to the sewer, or are you going to try and put those on the drain field?
I would connect them to sewer.
Which would bring the yearly cost, the return, even less than 13.
Well, it depends on when he builds the buildings, but yes, sir, that's correct.
Mr. Hopkins,
Sure.
so the total estimated cost is $94,000. I'm looking at the upfront ACSA reimbursement. It's got the $101,000 number in there. Is that, should that be $94,000 or $101,000? Where does $101,000 come from?
I haven't looked at this form in a while.
All right, right above the return on investment. The not bolded line above the return on investment.
Right below the total.
Okay. No, I did do that. And maybe a typo. Maybe that should be 94,140.
So it may improve.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I had originally gone through it, and I remember my original estimate was 101,100, and I went back and fine tuned it, and I guess I just forgot that line. So thank you. I'll fix that.
Mr. Hopkins, I just did the arithmetic on my calculator, and the number 47.75 is correct. That must have just been in the opening cell. The label cell in the spreadsheet.
That number?
Yeah, that number is is 44,960 divided by 94,140.
Yeah, but I think what Mr. Perot's saying is that this number should be 94,140.
Right, it's just the label. Everything everything pencils out right, it's just the label is wrong.
Oh,
The calculations are that important.
How confident are you in the cost? I see the note from 2017 costs from George E. Jones. I'm assuming we're gonna have a different contractor in 2021 if this project were built. Do we
Yes.
have new cost estimates?
Yeah, well, what I did is I went back and took the George E. Jones bid schedule from 2017. I updated it by 5%. 4%?
Yes, that's what you ended.
Well, I'm sorry, first I added 5% because George E. Jones typically would give us a preferred rates. And then, so I did that, then I increased it by inflation for the last 4 years for 4%. So I think the numbers are probably pretty good, but yes, we would have to go back and bid it out with another contract. Unless ahead of time, we would have time to actually re-advertise and rebid the annual construction contract. But I think for Mr. Gillespie, I think it might be better for him if we just did this now and maybe did the annual construction contract next year.
So basically we're paying for it up front. We get $44,960 back in connection with availability.
Well, if what Mr. Gillespie and I worked out is that he would pay those fees up front. So we would get that money, that would be part of, we'd be able to use that money for the construction. So we would be doing that.
So really, we're talking about 50-something thousand.
Yes.
$4,000. Which to me, one, I think environmentally it's sound to get as many buildings on sewer as we can. Especially if you said there's a failing drain field out there now. Two, I think it encourages development in the county because, I think if the sewers there, you're probably more inclined to build those buildings in the near future, which we need, which also increases the overall county tax base. The only reservation I have about supporting this is making sure that if we go in and put the sewer in, that any new buildings that are constructed, they are connected to the county sewer, the service authority sewer, not draining to it. It's a whole thing about, we've talked about in the past, if the water and sewer lines are there, people aren't required to connect to it. So if we could have that agreement, I'd be willing to support this.
Well, I haven't been able to work on it recently, but Mr. Lockman and I started working on revisions to Chapter 15 of the county code. And one of the things that, because of what you brought up a few months ago, is I think we need to add that ordinance in there that, like with the water, if you're within a certain distance, the developers, as a developer, you're required to extend public water to a certain place and connect, and we need to do the same thing with sewer. And I would think we could have that in place long before Mr. Gillespie is ready to do these. I'd like to do that next year.
Well, I think he was asking about this particular project.
I am, so I guess my question is, Mr. Gillespie, are you willing to enter into that agreement?
Yeah, so with those two lots, I am, but, the thing of it is, they're zoned R2 as they sit now. So as they sit because of the county code, I could do two different 4 units on each lot. So it'd be a total of another 8 units that I could potentially say that's there, but, at that, I'm willing to commit on this to them being built on and it will connect to the sewer that's there. But I tell you, to be completely honest, if I was to go ahead and to build on those lots, I would try to rezone to see if we can have more than just those 8 units there.
Yeah, I understand that. To me, it wouldn't matter if it was a 4-plex or a single family home.
Yeah.
If we're going to put the sewer, if we're going to upfront funding to put the sewer line in, it would be important to me to know that new construction is going to be connected. Whether it's 1 unit or 10 or whatever.
Mr. Martin, if I might butt in regarding the mandatory connections, an authority can adopt its own policy requiring mandatory connections. In fact, that's the standard way to do it. You could put it on the agenda any old time you want, and then the board of supervisors would need to concur, but it's actually an authority policy, so that would be initiated here if that's the desire of the board.
I'd be supporting the board wanted to initiate that policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should do that. I don't think we're gonna be able to do that today. Yet, you know, in an effort to move this forward, I'd be willing to make a motion that we go ahead and fund the sewer line with the understanding and agreement that any new construction would also be connected to the public sewer.
Okay. Mr. Lockerbie, would you help me with some kind of agreement on that?
Absolutely. And I'll help you with the mandatory connection policy for sewer.
Thank you.
Get that on.
One comment, are we gonna tie that to the lots that Mr. Gillespie owns at the current time?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's gonna bind to those specific lots?
Well, I think what we're talking about is two separate things. The first one
Correct.
is I agree with Mr. Gillespie, where he's agreeing to connect the lots that he currently owns.
Correct.
And then more generally, we develop a policy following along the lines of the existing policy for the water side to require connections to the sewer side. That would be adopted by this board, subject to concurrence by the board of supervisors. It's just a very simple yay or nay resolution by the board of supervisors, and off it goes. And you do see a majority of the board of supervisors here, so I think if y'all want it, it will pass.
My whole point is it does us no good to put infrastructure in the ground and then not.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that's a separate discussion, but.
I just wanna make sure it was clear that it was a separate discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a tricky policy too, though. You've got, drain fields that are perfectly good shape, and you all plan on an extension somewhere. That owner of that property already has a perfectly fine, drain field. Why is he gonna pay whatever it is, $5,000 to hook up to it?
Well, I think the policy,
He's not, it's.
And then, I don't even know, that was my understanding, what I just heard.
this would be for new development.
Yeah, you can't require people to abandon a perfectly functional, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say.
Yeah, but if it's perfectly functional, they keep doing what they're doing. But if they build something new, or if their system fails and VDH says, hey, you got sewage running out on the ground, they need to connect that.
So board, I believe there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All, everybody cognizant of that motion, you can have the discussion between, all in favor of Mr. Martin's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for this, very helpful.
Yes. Next item is the water sewer availability fees. You've got a copy of draft ordinance 2020-0015, which will go to the first reading at this afternoon's supervisors meeting, and second reading and a public hearing on 11/17, which will be a joint service authority board supervisors meeting at 7 o'clock. It's already been advertised, so we're good there. And I've also, we talked about the budget a little bit ago. I hope you all will have some time to look at it. What I'm planning on doing is get comments. Well, I'll be working with staff to do the final, the next phase of adjustments to the budget, and incorporating your comments as they come back and get you a draft final budget probably about the middle of the month for additional comments from y'all, and bring that back to you at the December meeting for adoption. So I look forward to any comments, questions, adjustments that you suggest. Questions? Service Authority Board reorganization, have you heard from the SCC in writing?
Yeah.
You got, okay.
It was,
Last I heard, it was you saw something on their website, but you hadn't gotten anything in the mail.
yeah, and then, That was one of the things that Paul Jacobson and I pulled out was we got the certificate of good standing that showed the amendment had been certified on September 3rd.
Second.
Yep, we have
I
that.
misunderstood.
Yep, that's fine.
Next thing is the water office building. I'm not gonna talk about the updates, but at the, about a few weeks ago, got a call from the, community development department. Somebody had come in, was talking to them about trying to talk the county into selling a parcel that the county owns at the corner of Amlon Road and Amlon Expressway, right across the street from the industrial park. And they were saying that their understanding is that that parcel had been reserved for a service authority pump station for many, many years, and it's never been put in, and this guy was suggesting to the county that maybe the county wants to sell it and get it redeveloped. And about that time, we did Mr. Martin's orientation. We were talking briefly about the water office, and he was suggesting moving the water office to the industrial park. And my response was, well, to me, the industrial park should be reserved for economic development. But when I found out about this parcel right across the street from there, I talked to him about it. He said I should bring it to the next board meeting. It's a perfect location for us. It's right in the middle of Madison Heights, right in the middle of our water system. Easy for everybody to get to. And so just wanted to bring that to your all's attention to see if that might not be a parcel that the service authority could acquire for the design and construction of a new water office at that location. I put in here some sketches and some photographs of the area. I just wanted to throw that out to you and see if that's something that you all would like to pursue.
So, yeah, I think my point is when I visited the service authority office, everybody's in there, right? It's not ADA accessible, parking is not pretty much non-existent. You know, they've got what space heaters underneath the desk. It was built in what,
55?
So I think the discussion this board needs to have is whether or not that building is meeting the needs of our employees. And, you know, either A, we put some funding into remodeling that building, or B, is it better to look for a new home? Whether that be built new, go into a existing building somewhere. But I think we need to have that discussion long term, especially as we start moving into budget preparation. We need to be thinking about that instead of just kicking the can down the road. That building is really not functional, I would think. So my thought on the county-owned piece of property, I would suggest it's been sitting there unless they're coming forth with some wonderful proposal, Chick-fil-A, whatever, you know, maybe we retain that as an option, or at least we offer that to the county. But yeah, I just think it's important that we have a discussion on the future service authority.
Some suggestions on what to do going forward?
I agree. I think it would be helpful. We've got to watch our costs. Building right now is, I'm going through one outrageous what a new building costs right now. I missed, when I was reading through this, I missed the portion about the pump station at this lot. You've worked for the authority in several capacities over the past several years. Is there potential for a pump station there?
No, I think that was decades ago, before the industrial park was built. I had to assume it was going to be a sewage pump station, but as part of, I designed and managed the project for the industrial park, and that included a sewage pump station for the industrial park. So the pump station's there. We don't need one right across the street.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So to me, that's a really nice lot, and it's right on the connection in between the bypass and Business 29. I'm not sure what the zoning is in that area. I know it is residential in parts of those areas. Across the street, it's not. Obviously, that's the industrial park. I was thinking when I was reading through this, I was thinking potentially a location in more of a, I'll just say maybe somewhat of underused area on Business 29 to see if we can look for a lease or an acquisition in that area. Granted that I don't like the idea of taking up property that's on the tax rolls, but if it's an impetus to create good use in that area that would help, I guess, build business around it, because there's a lot of traffic that you'll generate, or a decent amount of traffic that you'll generate, and that could be good for the businesses immediately adjacent to it. Maybe that could be a catalyst to the area. But I was brainstorming, just trying to brainstorm about it. I think it's worth a more lengthy discussion. I think that Mr. Martin brings up an excellent point. I'm not convinced that this is the spot. I think this is too good of a spot, honestly. And my opinion is I'd like to find something that maybe would be less expensive for us to do, and it's not as attractive for a developer.
Okay, so I'll agree with that too. I don't think this is the spot either. I'd rather see us utilize something that may be on the US Business 29 corridor as opposed to the bypass right there. So I'll agree with your sentiment. The thing I would look at is how do we, how do we pay for this? Because we have hit our water and sewer customers with about a 7% increase in the rates over the past 4 to 5 years. I think it was over a 20% increase. So, you're going to have to hit them with a big increase to finance this, I would think. So.
Well, we'd be getting another loan.
Yeah, another loan, so you increase the rates. Frankly, I know the other building is old, but I've never had a problem with parking. I mean, parking on Main Street, I've never had a problem with that. The building's old. You could redo HVAC systems and so forth in the building. I know the developer probably would like us to be out of that building. Maybe that's some of the catalyst to try to get us off that spot, to have better access to the back of the building. I'm not sure. Just a few weeks ago, you were talking about doing work along the street and the sidewalk and looking to put in a drive-through there. So I think we have more than one option, but I tend to agree if we do move in that direction, a newer building or maybe a different spot, we look at something that's already available, that's built that we can repurpose and use as opposed to building new.
Yeah, that's fine. No, the catalyst to this discussion was me visiting for my tour of the facilities and seeing the condition that our water service authorities are sitting in, and no ADA access for people coming to and from the building. That's what started this discussion. So to me, move to a different spot, build new, or, let's look at renovating the building. Either of those are acceptable to me, but I think we need to do something. I think we need to do something in the near future. So I think we need to start talking about what we're going to do and start thinking about how we're going to do it.
Madam Chair, I think this might be a little bit out of order on the agenda, but it brings up an interesting discussion, and I would like to request that we sometime in January have a planning session as a board. We haven't done that. Mr. Pereira and I coming on have not had a chance to tour all the facilities, but I think we're going to do that in a couple of weeks. I think it would be a good time for us to be able, in a little different forum, to be able to look at long-range planning. We might be able to do that January, February time range. That would be agreeable with everyone.
I actually thought about that on the way up here, like a retreat-ish type thing for the 5 of us. I don't know, board, the rest of you, how do you feel about that? And so, Mr. Hopkins, is that something that you can schedule for us?
Yeah, is that something just for the board, or will I be involved in it also, or how's this work?
I think you will.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll send out an email. I'll get you all to pick a day and time, and we'll get a schedule and where we're going to do it, and we'll get it set up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Good idea. Next, I wanted to, we had talked briefly in the past about what's happening with the debt repayment plans and what's going on with the cutoffs and all that. There's a, in the report, there's a whole list. I mean, apparently the General Assembly has fine-tuned the proposed legislation. And if you look at all the stuff that they're going to be expecting us to do, there is a heck of a lot of work that's going to have to be done by staff. And I just want to let you all know, this is going to be, it's even more onerous than I thought it was going to be when I first heard about it several months ago. This is, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of data that's going to have to be monitored and or collected, monitored, sent to the state, tracked, updated every month. And I guess I'm complaining a little bit, but all I'm really doing is just letting you all know that this is going to be a real thing.
I'm sorry, for what exactly, for what did the legislature get you to do now?
No, it has to do with the cutoffs for the pandemic.
Pandemic related costs,
Right.
okay, and so the record keeping associated
Exactly.
with that is gonna be a real pain in the tail.
Yes, sir. You can see the list. I mean, there's just all kinds. I don't have no idea what they're going to do with all this data, but it's just going to be a lot of work for a small staff operation like we are. The next item, and following up on that, I just found out about this recently. Now DEQ is coming out with a legislation for total maximum daily load requirements for PCDs in wastewater treatment plant discharges in the James River basin. We have two tiny wastewater treatment plants in that basin. They're about 2 miles away by Crow and about 4 miles away by Stream. I've already started talking to DEQ about whether we would really be required to do this because there's no, it's all residential going to these two plants. And it's a long distance from there to the river. And there are other mitigating factors that I think we might be able to get out of this. But I've talked to some other people, that other utilities that have been in the same kind of a situation in the past, and DEQ did not let them out. They ended up, these other service authorities could demonstrate that there were no PCDs and discharges and could never be, but DEQ still required them to monitor and track them and sample and test and everything else. So I'll keep following up on that and see if I can get us out of it and keep reporting back to you all as to where we are on. And that's all I've got on old business, unless you all have anything for me.
Looks like you're good. You can move forward with your business.
Okay, new business, first thing is appropriation. I talked earlier in the meeting that we got a reimbursement from VDOT for the Woody's Lake Road project, water and sewer line relocations. That money went directly into our reserves, and I need to get it appropriated into our budget from reserves to eliminate the deficit in the budget. So I'm looking for appropriation.
Board, any questions? Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the ACSA board appropriate $148,621.33 into the ACSA budget from ACSA reserves for the attached request.
There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, next is information only. At the last supervisors meeting, I spoke during the citizen comment period regarding issues pertaining to Central Virginia Training Center. I mean, 3 of you all are supervisors, and so you were there when I did that. But there are a lot of issues that are indicating a potential brewing problem there with vandalism, crime, other things, and the state possibly not meeting their requirements to their responsibilities to maintain the site. As a result of that, the county administrator had gotten the board of supervisors' signature on a letter that went to the state, and the state since has come back with a response that maybe Mr. Rogers wants to elaborate on a little bit, but essentially said, we're aware of this problem, we're addressing this problem, and it listed several things that they're going to do. And since that missive came back from the state, there have been 2 more break-ins and vandalism over there. So the problem is still existing, but I just want to let you all know that we're working on this with the county and trying to get this resolved and eliminate, nip the problem in the bud before it gets big. More bad news. For the last about a month, we've been in a situation where we've had a contractor stealing water from the service authority to the amount of several $100s. We know exactly who it is because we've had people out there who have identified them, but we have not been able to catch them. So we've increased patrols down there. I've gotten in touch with VDOT and with the county sheriff's office, and also with talked to VDOT about who the permittee was for the work. And I talked to that company, and his response was that it couldn't be our people. We would never do anything like that. And I told him, well, they've been spotted, you've been specifically identified, and he wouldn't take responsibility for it, but we haven't been able to catch them. The good news is that since we contacted VDOT and the sheriff's office for more patrols, and we started more patrols, the problem seems to have stopped. I mean, we first found out about it from all the complaints we were getting from customers down there about low water pressure. I mean, they were sending 3 trucks at a time to hydrants that were on an 8-inch water, a 12-inch water line, and just sucking all the water out of it. So the service pressures were dropping significantly. The water was being all roiled up. But with the contacts and us following up on it, we haven't had any complaints in about a week. So we think the situation is resolved.
Mr. Hopkins, I was thinking about this on the drive up. Why don't you contact the contractor, offer them a very favorable water supply rate, and they can draw their water from Mobile Home Park behind CBCC?
Well, they are already getting water from the water plant. That's what's there. I don't want to get real specific on what they're doing because I don't want this to get into the public record. But they're going to the water plant in the mornings and getting water. And then I think what we think was happening about mid-afternoon, they were running out of water. And because it was so close to the end of the day, they didn't want to drive all the way down to the water plant and drive all the way back and get to the end of the day and the day's gone. So they just trucked on up Riverview Road and stole water.
So why don't you put a meter at the Mobile Home Park if you've got a wastewater there anyway, you're getting ready to?
No, this is on Riverview Drive, not at the Mobile Home Park.
It runs from the jail.
It's north of the jail.
Yeah.
Where are you ready to wastewater? At the Mobile Home Park behind CBTC, right?
Yes, sir.
And they're working on the bypass, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
how about they just run down to the Mobile Home Park and pull water off of a meter?
They could, but if they were going, well, I mean, it's a thought. But
My thought is just, instead of wasting water like you may have to do, why not sell it and throw it?
Well, we're not at that point now. But
Yeah.
if it happens, we could certainly do that. But again, I think the problem's solved.
Okay.
I think they've gotten the notice that they're being looked for and watched, and they've stopped.
But do they still have a demand for water?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They're
So
still going to the water plant
I
every
think
morning.
Mr. Perez's point is, why don't we sell them water from the mobile home park instead of us dumping it on the ground?
Well, we're not dumping on the ground at this
We're
point.
not to the.
But
No, we haven't gotten to that
get
point.
to that point.
But it would improve water quality in the Mobile Home Park,
Correct.
theoretically.
Theoretically, yes, sir. Eventually, when we get to that point.
Yes, I think the point is, okay, if you don't have enough time to drive back to the plant to get the water, we're gonna set up a meter for you, right? And we're gonna do it in a location that's not gonna cause issues with our, our customers, make water, all that. Here's a meter, here's another place you can go access water.
We could do that. It's just more work for staff. We'd have to have somebody there to operate the hydrant because they don't know how to operate them properly.
They probably do.
You can set yourself up for more staff. Somebody could easily go down there and do it.
That's true.
I don't know, I just think if you have one place where you got water, and that's where you do it, you can set up too much for staff. I just don't think it's a good idea, but I don't think if you put it in practice, I don't know how good it is.
David's right, it's not that big a deal.
Okay, but again, I think the problem's solved. Now I've got, before we wind up, I've got two bits of good news. I want to wind up the meeting that way. First is we just connected the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts to our water system. That involves the campus over there is across the street from Sweetbriar. It involves 5 buildings. One is essentially a small hotel. It's got 24 rooms in it and 12 bathrooms. There's also an office building, an artist studio, a couple other buildings. So that is when the pandemic tones down and they open back up for artists and students, that hopefully will be a significant water service for us. They paid over $20,000 in tap fees, so that is some good news. And the second bit of good news, for many, many years, and I first heard about this when I was working with Hurt Profit, and working with Dan French when he was director here. The Seminole Plaza Shopping Center, Judge Schrader, when he first developed that property many years ago, he put in a private sewer system with his own little lagoon wastewater treatment plant. And about 1955, I think it was, the Service Authority got a bond, built the Williams Run pump station down on the river and put in the Williams Run trunk sewer that went right up through the property where the lagoon was. The lagoon was taken out, and they actually connected their system to the new public sewer. But the system stayed a private system. But they were our customers because they were connected to our system, to the public system, but the actual sewer lines on this, what is now the shopping center property, stayed private. But ever since then, or I don't know exactly when it started, but that private sewer system has been deteriorated. It's very old. Nobody knows anything about where it is, really definitively where it is, what kind of condition it is, but it overflows or backs up on once every few years. And every time it happens, of course, we're the first ones that are called because everybody figures we're the public utility, so it's sewer, so it must be us. And I get hold of the Department of Health. We go out there, find out it's not us. We talk to whoever the current owner is of the shopping center, and the response is always the same: we don't know. It says, we bought the shopping center, we didn't buy the sewer system. And there's never been any way to tie the shopping center, to tie the sewer back to the shopping center property and to the current owner. So we had another situation like that about 2 months ago, had a sewer overflow on a private property out there. And true to form, the current shopping center owner said that he wasn't responsible, he wasn't going to do anything to fix it. And it turns out that the property owner actually hired a plumber to go out there and rod the sewer. And I went up to the courthouse and did some research, and actually found documents that, to me, definitively makes it clear that the private sewer belongs to the shopping center. And I've sent those documents to the Department of Health. They concur with me that next time there's an issue, they're going to ding the shopping center with these documents, and they've also sent them to the Department of Environmental Quality, and they will bring DEQ into this. So we think we have finally solved this problem that crops up every 3 or 4 years for the last maybe several decades anyway. So.
Okay, so when the shopping center was constructed, it was built a private sewer, and all the buildings went to a lagoon.
Right.
And then you said we came in and put a public sewer line in?
Yes, sir. When we put in the Williams Run pump station, we ran I think it's a 12 or 16-inch trunk sewer from there all the way up to.
So did the buildings not connect to the new sewer?
No, sir. No, sir. The private system was here, was the lagoon right here. We ran our trunk sewer over here, took out the lagoon, and they extended to connect to our sewer. All this stayed private. Everything on the shopping center property stayed private.
So the lagoon connects to our sewer?
Well, no, the lagoon was taken out as part of the sewer project. When they connected to our sewer, we took the lagoon out.
So they did connect to the sewer?
Yes, sir.
So the overflows are coming from the private line? Correct.
What's happening is, and we've seen this repeatedly, that there's, it's at least partially due to construction improvements being done to the buildings. Somehow that stuff is getting into the sewers, and it goes down in certain ways, builds up, clogs the sewer, then it backs up and overflows in the manhole. Or it could just be, there was one about a year or so ago, there was just massive grease that was coming from the restaurants there that built up in a private sewer.
Sounds like the DEQ and health department needs to do it.
Well, and we've been trying, but there's never been anything to tie the sewer back to the shopping center. And so nobody's been able to do anything. But I think now we have.
So I understand you've notified the health department and who else?
They notified the Department of Environmental Quality.
Okay. I think it would be appropriate if we also notify with those same documents, notify the property owner at this point in time to put them on notice that.
I have. Already
Okay,
told.
so they're aware that, and they have a copy of the documents that you found.
Yes, sir. I actually sent that gentleman, said, you've been saying for the last month or so that you didn't own this. Well, unless you can come up with documents after December 3rd of 1980 that shows that you divested yourself of the sewer belongs to you. And, because I mean, these documents are pretty clear.
Right.
And the shopping center, he just came back and said the same thing. It's not ours. We're not going to do anything.
And Mr. Lockaby, have you looked at those documents? Do we have any legal opinion on as to the validity of what we think we stand on?
I agree with Mr. Hopkins. I haven't looked at the exact documents that I might very well have, but I looked at the ownership of this as well and concluded it had been developed as part of a private system and it had never been conveyed to us. And that leads me to believe that you need to look through the chain of the title of all the deeds, but it's some private person's, not ours.
Okay.
So you know how you go through the chain of deeds. Sometimes somebody forgets to put in the clause that says all appurtenances there too, and then it winds up being somebody in the chain belongs to them. But at some point, it ain't ours.
So have we given them any legal notice? Just other than your correspondence?
No, sir.
It might be a good idea to give them legal notice, that's our position.
And unfortunately, I don't know whether I should say this out loud, my experience is that when this happens, all of a sudden VDH and DEQ are wondering how much money it will take for us to take it over. But
They do, and I was just gonna, that was gonna be my next statement, is the last thing we wanna do is take this over. Because this is a mess. It's what, 60, 70 years old now? It's deteriorating, it's been having problems for decades. The last thing we wanna do is take this thing over. It's just, I mean, it's just gonna be a boondoggle, a money pit. And we're getting close to 3 o'clock. I'm sure you all would like to take a break. There's some stuff in here, just stuff that Rich and I have been working on. I don't know whether we can talk about it if you want, or if you want, we can just leave it in the board packet, and you all can take a break, and then the supervisor's meeting starts in about 18 minutes.
Or anything you want to discuss on miscellaneous?
All right.
Thank you. Good.
That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. We're going to open the floor back up for citizen comments.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to matters from the members of the Service Authority Board. Anything to move?
No, ma'am.
Hero. Unfortunately, I have two things. One, I saw that you were working on a new website, communications, under business friendliness, I believe.
Yes.
Where do we stand with the Service Authority logo to match Amherst County logo?
The Service Authority logo right now does match the county logo.
I thought at one point you were working with the developer of the Amherst County logo.
Oh, you're talking about the branding logo?
Yep. Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. That's all taken care of. That logo is going to be painted on the Littleton Lane tank the next time we paint that tank in 2022.
Are you talking about the Amherst County one, or are you talking about specifically for the Service Authority?
No, I'm talking about the branding logo, where the A, the colorful A and all that. Now, another thing, I wasn't going to bring it up until the January meeting. I thought it'd be more appropriate to do it then. But I've come up with a new logo for the Service Authority that run by the EDA. I mean, this is actually working with the EDA on this, Lori Saunders over there. And we've come up with something that we think is going to be very attractive and give a better idea of what the Service Authority does. I mean, if you look at our logo now, you really can't tell. But I was going to bring that to the board at the January meeting. I figured that would be the best time to do it, though I can bring it at the December meeting if you like.
Okay. January's fine. I just want to make sure that we were getting branding that looked like the schools and everybody else. It's like the EDA and the.
Yes, ma'am. The branding is part of this logo. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then second thing with the budget, are you working with Stacy on your budget?
No, ma'am. What I wanted to do, I've got a new assistant director. I've got 2 new board members, one who has specifically stated that he wants to be involved in this. I figured I didn't want to get too many new people involved at one time, or it's going to turn into a committee thing that will never get done. So I figured that let me work with, what I'd like to do is work with Mr. Crowe, Mr. Hall on this budget and the monthly report, and get to the point where we're all interior, inside the service authority are okay with where we want to go with this. And next year's budget, I can send it to Ms. Wilkes if you like to. I don't want to change the format at this point because we really don't have time to do it. And I don't really know if we're not going to change format, why she would want to see it, because it's just, if we're not changing format, it's just the numbers, and the numbers really are not going to mean anything to her because she doesn't know how we spend our money. So, but what I wanted to do is, like I said, work with Mr. Crowe, Mr. Hall, maybe in the planning session, talk about this more also. And then next year, bring the finance director into it and maybe, and do a more developed, the budget process and the budget format.
I would just think that she is an expert, and forgive me, I don't remember your history. Aren't you an engineer?
I'm an engineer, I'm not a finance guy. I can read a balance sheet.
We appreciate that. But I would suspect that, I'm pretty sure that Stacy was brought on to help everybody with their budgets and so forth. And am I correct on that, Mr. Rogers? And so I would say involve her through your budget process. Why not this year? Involve her.
I'm happy to send it to her. I'll get it to her as soon as I get back to the office.
We'll give her time for feedback.
Well, man, we're not going to bring it up until the next board meeting. So,
Well, if there is nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all. Good to see you.
All right.
I just came back.